You know, get what you want. You try sometime to get.
You know, the show wouldn't be right unless we.
It makes it fun.
Well, I am not
hang
a
in there.
person. I'm a relationship person.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's right.
We going?
Saturday Night
Live version of
That's yeah, growing up, I was a technical nerd. You know, I basically didn't care about relationships, and that all changed when I got married and started having children.
As it should.
Absolutely. Well, as a clinical psychotherapist, we can discuss that one for sure, Ray. So
yeah.
We had some catching up to do, Ray.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. The introduction?
Sure. I'm Ray Pillar, and I'm our co-hosts today. And I'm sitting here in Aurora, Illinois, where the temperature is 61 degrees, partly cloudy. And we'll start with Rebecca, since you haven't been on.
Profiles. I'm a behavioral scientist. I'm living in San Diego. And of course, San Diego is the same every day. It's about 70, 72 degrees, the sun's shining, and there's a light little breeze. Lovely place. Come visit anytime. And how about you, Elizabeth? What's going on with you?
I am in Spanish Fort, Alabama, where we are about 70 degrees. It's gorgeous, not a cloud in the sky. I am the publisher of the Franchise Woman magazine, directed by women, for women, about women in franchising. So we are, and Rebecca and I are going to start a podcast together shortly. So with Fred's help, and we're pretty excited about that.
And Fred is the guy behind the scenes. You can't see him. He said he's gonna pop in and out. So our audience will be able to see him occasionally, but not right now. So who wants to introduce our guest today?
I could do it if that's okay. He's a captain and biomedical science officer in the U.S. Air Force. He's also a therapist specializing in depression, anxiety, PTSD, and geriatrics. So we're going to talk a lot of the same language, John. I'm so excited to have you on board.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Rebecca. It's very happy to be here. We're in Phoenix, Scottsdale, Arizona, where it's a little bit cloudy, but I think it's about 82 degrees here. And from a San Diego standpoint, the only thing I know is it is always the same temperature, but you do have what they call the June gloom in June sometimes. And the June gloom is, don't go to San Diego in June if you're wanting the sun, because it tends not to happen the first half of June. But anyway,
Yeah,
it's a pleasure to meet you all. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
So,
go ahead.
yeah, well, like I said, I'm really excited to talk to you
Sure.
because
I'm gonna sit back and listen.
this idea of a concierge, perfect companion idea fascinates me, especially what appears to be your approach, which is a much more holistic approach, meaning not just taking care of some of the physical and household needs of someone, but also the psychological needs of that individual. And you mentioned earlier, kind of offline, how important relationship is to you and how you're a relationship guy. Can you tell us how that integrates into the perfect companion, this taking care of the whole, more of the whole person, especially their heart also?
So let me say, obviously, my background is of a psychotherapy standpoint. I was a captain in the Air Force. I worked 9 years in VA hospitals, doing a lot of PTSD work. Was in private practice for 35 years. So if I could give you some historical background, would that kind of help first? Because that could lead into your question.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to be sure. So basically, I had a geriatric practice for years, a Medicare practice where I could go out and make house calls. And I'd see people in their own homes or in assisted living places, independent living places, and basically to do mental health evaluations for depression, anxiety disorders, bipolar illness, Alzheimer's, dementia. And I was one of a few people who was approved from a Medicare standpoint to be able to do that. So I was a Medicare provider for 30 years. So in 2005, I got a call in North Scottsdale in a high-end house, and they had a home health care company out there who was having a difficult problem with caregivers coming in and out of there. They weren't relating with the clients. They happened to come from a franchisee. You know, there's a lot of home care companies that are franchise types of a model, and they were not reliable. They had some things stolen from the home. They wouldn't relate on a emotional or functional type of a level with their client. The head of nursing for this particular company, who knew me well, said, "John, we have a real problem out here in Scottsdale and Paradise Valley and some of the higher end the areas, and you would be a perfect person to think about starting a small boutique type of company that would cater to the needs of these kinds of clients." Well, having a very busy psychotherapy practice at the time, I thought it'd be a difficult type of a venture. But that night I went home, and as a law of attraction would state, I went on my computer, and one of my best friends when I was a kid had 13 franchise comfort keeper home care companies. And I hadn't talked with David for a long time. And I called him up on the phone. I said, "What are you guys doing in the home care business?" They've always been successful from a business standpoint, but they weren't in healthcare. And they said that they had started their Comfort Keeper franchise in 2003, and they now had 13. And so they talked to me about the model and the baby boomers such as ourselves, and the aging at home, aging in place. And so I decided to go back home to Ohio and look at the model that they had. I went there and it was the complete and antithesis of any kind of a business model I would have. I saw people talking in cubicles, on phones. They weren't really interested in the family dynamics or the psychosocial needs of their clients. They were more interested in getting the volume out, any kind of caregiver they can get there. It was the expedience of the moment that was really important for them. So for me, being a relationship type of individual, that helped me because I could see if this is how all the other companies represent themselves, I have an opportunity. So I went back and formulated a model without any assistance and trying to figure out how I can work this. And basically, for a couple of years with a friend of mine who was technology oriented, we had another company and tried to figure out how we can work this and make this work. The beauty of this was I got a call from one of the leading hospitals in town, and they wanted me from a psychological standpoint to see one of their clients who presented in the emergency room every day. And this is a leading hospital. And this particular client was bipolar and was creating a lot of problems, so they couldn't do their work in the emergency room. So I got called out, and she never had any caregiving for her, but she certainly had a lot of psychological needs. And so I got involved both from a psychosocial standpoint from my practice, and also I could provide a caregiver for her because her son said she needs someone to stay there, and I agreed with that. So what had happened was, from presenting in the emergency room 5 times a week, over a period of a few months, we got her down to 3 times a week, 1 time a week, pretty soon once a month. Because from a preventative standpoint, we were having the quality of care that she needed in home that would preclude the fact she does not have to go back to the hospital. And that was a gold mine for me, because then the calls started to come in about, boy, John Siegel, any difficult client you have who needs home care, call him.
Yeah.
Now, was it a model that I wanted at the time, to have every bipolar call me and to have that, to provide that care for them? But it certainly gave us the presentation at some of the major hospitals that if you have a problem, we would be there, we can handle that, and we would let them do their work in the emergency room. So that's how that kind of started. And then in 2008, I went out on my own, and the Perfect Companion started. And our whole goal with the Perfect Companion is to match up the individual skill sets and personality of our clients and families with the individual needs and personality of our clients. And we've done that in spades. We have had a very successful business. I did this out of my car basically till 2018 and was very successful at it, meaning I use my accountant's office, but I'm out in homes all the time and in the Phoenix, Scottsdale, I'm in the area. And so decided to open an office in 2018. We opened an office, became a corporate type of an entity. And now we have administrators, clinical care, coordinators, and we have about 100 people working for us now. So what we've developed has been a very successful business model in a lot of the higher end areas, such as the V, which is run by the Pritzker family in Chicago, J.B. Pritzker being the governor of the state of Illinois. They have the Hyatt Regency hotels. And of course, they have some very high-end concierge care, independent living, and assisted properties. One of their flagship, their properties is here, and we are the largest provider of in-home care services for them out here. Being that there's about 600 to 700 home care companies here in Phoenix, Scottsdale, that's a feather in our cap for sure.
Sure.
So what we've done from a relationship standpoint is really hone in on not only the functional needs of a client on a day-to-day basis, but also the psychosocial needs as to having an adult daughter who tends to be the primary caretaker for her loved one, to remove the burdens from her so that she can be a daughter again, and that we can provide the necessary services for them on a day-to-day type of a basis.
Right. And, you know, one of the things that I'm really interested in your business model is the assessments. And you talk about that you can do assessments and determine skill sets and personalities of caregivers and match them effectively to your clients. So I was curious to know what that process is. How do you do that? How well does it work? What do you do if something doesn't actually work out? I'm sure it's not a perfect system. You know, if you assess, I'm sure you get it right most of the time, but I'm sure there are various things that play in. So what kind of factors are there that you use to determine that?
So a lot of the factors we work on is a lot of our caregivers are looking for what we call the Ritz-Carlton model of care. It's kind of translated into this ladies and gentlemen caring for ladies and gentlemen. I looked at what was out there, and I looked at the prospect of somebody maybe coming from a lower socioeconomic background who really has not related to what we would call a concierge type care person from a different economic background, and say, how are they going to relate with them if they're doing a companion type of job with them? Because not all our jobs are heavy caregiving. A lot of our jobs are companion type work, where we're going to take them to doctor's appointments, where we're going to take them to the bank or take them to the restaurants. When they go out, they want to be socially engaged. And if they're going to be socially engaged, they want somebody who is like them and not somebody who can't really relate with them, coming out in scrubs and just being there to entertain them or to work with them, but they're not really doing much. They want someone who can relate with them from a personality standpoint. So what we found was, if we could hire people retiring from the workforce, or maybe some business people, some nurses, some teachers, a little bit more educated people who can relate to our clientele, that was huge for us. So the personality is very important. So if we go out and meet with somebody, I want to always know where they're from. If they're from the East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, we have a lot of demographic data that we're incorporating, and we're refining our model all the time. We're actually working with a group in Chicago about coming up with an eHarmony or Match.com type of technology platform. And because of COVID-19, they were supposed to come down here last month. That hasn't happened. But we're trying to identify this as a technology platform, because I can tell you from a subjective standpoint, the people on my staff were great at it, but we would like to be able to identify that more from whether it's a Minnesota multiphasic inventory type test we can do with them, or some kind of psychological tool we can do. We're small enough at this point that we're able to do it ourselves. And part of replicating the model we have, it's going to be contingent on what kind of technology platform we can induce in terms of doing this. So we're working on that. And we're also working on a robot, a caregiving robot that can do the menial labor types of jobs, so that we can focus on what we do best, and that's relating with our clients. So again, when we go out, we have a clinical care assessment. We're focusing on a lot of psychosocial factors, family dynamics, where they're from, what kind of relationships they may have with their daughters and sons, what support systems they have, the interests that they have, what do they like. It's very important that we continue to maintain that our clients maintain who they are. Where they're not, now that they're older, we want them to have purpose in their life. everybody has to have that. And so for us to maintain that purpose for them, it's to find someone who can enhance their lives so they can live as independently as they can. So part of that is, of course, all the medications they may be on, the nutritional demands they have is all incorporated in that also. But the big differentiating factor is our ability to find somebody who relates to them from a personality standpoint. So what we've done at some of the higher end places is we will have a lead companion, a lead concierge care person there who everybody loves. And it's one person, for instance, in North Scottsdale at the V, we have a lady who is a TV news anchor who produced records for Phil Collins and is a graduate and from a Eastern school. She's a helicopter pilot too. They love her, but she's only one person. So if she has 2 or 3 clients there, she's going to lead the clientele out there to us. And then we have Ann Johnson or Thelma Brown or Tammy. We have other caregivers who may not be that particular person, but can perform the kind of duties they need. So it's worked out really well for us to be able to have the quality of the caregivers. It's huge in terms of the relationships they have built, if that helps.
Relationships are extremely important. And in some aspects, my company does the same thing. It's amazing how many homes that we service. We do something a little bit extra, like clean their home, but a lot of times we are there simply to give some comfort to retired people who are living alone or whatever. Sure. So it's amazing. It's amazing how much our clients love our maids. They really love them, and it is a relationship. Now, in my business, I've got some of my my maids have been with me for almost as long as I've been in business, which is 17 years, and that's kind of unheard of. And over that time, we have created a friendship that's more like family.
Exactly. So just to get back to your original question, though, I have a program which I think is what you were asking me called EIPPO. And if you remember when you were a kid, BINGO, bingo is your name-o. If you're in camp, I don't know. But EIPPO stands for Education, Intervention, Prevention equals Preferred Outcome. And what we do is we've identified areas of concern for older individuals that are going to be very important as to whether they have a successful engagement or not. Fall risk is first. And in fall risk, so if we go into someone's house, we'll knock on the door if we're seeing them in their own home. A gentleman or lady will come to the door with a walker, and there will be the throw rugs will be there. Immediately, a lot of our clients have, I don't know if you know what Copenhagen furniture is, Scandinavian furniture, but they tend to have pointed glass tables around or objects that are very are modernistic. So if they're going to fall with the walker with a throw rug, they're maybe going to fall into a pointed glass, which is going to be conducive to them having a fall. When we walk in there, we go to the refrigerator. We will look in the refrigerator, and we want to know if the milk has been in there for how long, because if the milk has been in there for, people have milk in there for 3 months. And so it tells me one of 2 things. It tells me, is there a support system that they have who is checking on them? Or do they have a dementia problem and they forget to tell their loved ones, or they can't go out and buy that milk? So we're looking for the dementia issue, and we're looking if they have a support type of a system. We'll go into the bathroom and we'll see if they have a roll-in shower, if they have a shower seat in the bathtub. we want to make sure anything from a fall risk standpoint is taken care of immediately, because it's very important. There's so many people don't have grab bars and things that you would think they might have. So fall risk, that's the biggest thing. Urinary tract infections, UTIs. I can't tell you, on a Friday night, if you go into an emergency room in a major hospital here, you have an elder individual who's 90, and the emergency room doctors are swamped. Hopefully they're doing a really good demographic history of their clients, but sometimes they don't have time. Someone presents with auditory or visual confusion, hallucinations. I've had clients who have been sent to inpatient adult psychiatric places when they've never had any psychiatric issues in their life, but they haven't ruled out the fact that they may have a urinary tract infection, and it isn't a psychological issue. It isn't having to do from a mental health standpoint. It's because the physiological issues haven't been taken into account first. So UTIs are huge, and they reoccur. So whether they're on the therapeutic, the medication regime of Cipro or any of the other antibacterial components, it gets missed a lot. So we want to educate. We're always educating our families and the adult caregivers or people around us as to, I'm not an MD, but if you call your family practice physician or internal med, you want to ask them about that so that the urinary tract infections is taken care of. Trans ischemia, TIAs, we have a really, really big issue about what is Alzheimer's, what is dementia, and the types there are. And the Lewy body syndrome, which gets misdiagnosed all the time, vascular dementia, which doesn't show up on CAT scans or PET scans as a brain bleed. It's significant in the fact, because if you have a vascular dementia client and you're going to treat them as an Alzheimer client, it's not the same thing. A vascular dementia client can present not in this hollow Alzheimer look. They're going to have behaviors that'll change. So one day they'll be fine. Everything looks good. The next day they're not. So to be able to educate them through that type of process is a big deal too. Medication the indicators are huge from the standpoint of, I've had Mayo Clinic clients, and we had a bipolar individual who they couldn't figure out why he was just in a very hyper a manic phase. And they called us in, and knowing that he was bipolar, I wanted to know what the medication, the regime the person was on. Well, being on valproic acid, being on Depakote, the first thing I would ask is, when was the last time a valproic acid test has been done? If you're on a valproic acid, you can do a stabilization test every 3 to 4 months. If it's between 0.5 and 1.2, you'll be in a stabilized range. You won't have the mood swings. So the person had never had one and had been on Depakote for 3 years. So these are ways that we can be helping our families and our clients to determine what issues they might have. And it really helps to have a program to identify these things from that standpoint. That's
So
yeah.
You are in the process, or you have franchised your system?
So we are in an organic business type of a model. We have been very successful in, for me, it's been the question of whether I want to scale this or not. I have a lot of people around me who are encouraging me to scale, because we're so individualistic in how we do what we do. If we can replicate our model It's something that we are interested in. I have a lot of contacts. I have contacts in North Shore and Lake Forest, Wilmette, Highland Park area, other places around the country who are interested in what we do. So right now, what we don't have a specific type of a model yet that we're looking at, whether it's a franchise model, whether it's a licensing model, whether it's a corporate store model. We're not quite sure yet, but we certainly know we need to have operators and executors who can who we can train, policies and procedures for everything.
That's the first part.
So yeah, no, we have all of that.
Yeah.
So we have developed some excellent relationships. We just signed a contract with one of the largest senior care companies in the country, and we're going to be doing staffing for them. So we're going to be doing staffing here in this state of Arizona. So for us, that's going to mean another way of doing business, because what we want to do now is advance to what I would call concierge care floor. And concierge care floor would be a model of care where we're providing concierge care from a volume standpoint on the floors of the individual places themselves. Because when we go into places, they're understaffed, undermanned. That's why we're there from a private duty standpoint in the first place, because they don't have enough quality caregivers to care for them. And one caregiver is trying to take care of 5 people, 10 people. So if we can train them, and if we can do a floor type of a model where we can have the concierge care that we do on a private duty standpoint, if that translates into us being able to do that on a independent living, a floor type of standpoint, that's going to be big for us. So that's our goal now too.
When you say floor, you're talking about the care providers, not the actual clients.
Yes, I'm talking about when you go on a floor of a big institutional living place where we have a lot of private duty people in to provide the services that they do. For every 5 clients, they'll assign a care person to those 5 or 6, those people. So if we can put the concierge model into vogue, these people would really appreciate that, I'm sure, because they're used to that. So
Yeah, of course.
So yeah.
All right, we need to take a quick break just to thank our sponsors. We're going to thank the Link Local Network for broadcasting the Pillars of Franchising. We want to remind our viewers to call 323-580-5755 to ask questions or make comments. And we'd like to thank Westvine and the Franchise Women for sponsoring the Pillars of Franchise. Rebecca, what's your next question?
I guess I had a question. You talk about scaling and about personality and matching, a care provider to your client and to a family. This caring vertical, let's call it, industry seems to be highly populated by women. Are you noticing the same, and is part of that acceptable if we're providing care as a woman to a man? Are there any issues around that, any times that comes up? And what are you doing to attract these caregivers? I know it sounds like you have a really solid process in place for separating them out, but I'm interested in what you're doing to attract your caregivers.
I'd like you to answer that. I'm going to bring on my executive vice president, who's a female, because I am actually, I'm not used to talking this much and verbally. So I would like her maybe to get involved here and answer that question, although she says I would do a great job at answering it. So I'm going to introduce to you Cassandra.
Hey, Cassandra.
Hi. So the reason I like for John to answer this question is because I actually put him in front of a case study person to make sure that he was allowed to say what he normally says in public, which is that we hire mostly females.
Yeah. Well, in the world of franchising, just so you know, in the world of franchising, it's very popular with women and growing in popularity more with every day. When I started in franchising 27 years ago, you barely saw a woman in the franchise executive or as a franchisee. And today it's at about 30% of the population and rapidly growing. So I'm really glad that you're addressing that and you're comfortable saying, hey, we love working with women.
Absolutely. We have about 90 women and, 3 men, including John. So
now we know why you like this business.
Yeah. I don't know how he puts up with all of us.
All that estrogen out there, right?
Yeah.
We do a great job for John, and I think the one caveat is that he has that psychology background, so he understands us really well.
Yeah.
So we tend to find an attraction to women, obviously, because they're more nurturing and they're more caretaking, and a lot of them have had an experience. So that's really where we get this heart-centered person, is because they've had an experience personally, and then they're also nurturers. We also have retired business women, and we really love, that's what we're looking for, is retired business women most of the time, because we have that upper scale clientele and they really can relate. The question you asked about, like bathing, right? And you have a male client, the men tend to be more comfortable with a female helping them with that care versus having a man. So that really is not an issue per se, but we do have several men who maybe they've had some procedures or some doctors, or they really don't care, but it's very far and few between where a male client is more comfortable with a male caregiver versus having a female. So
fascinating. My mother is in a independent living nursing home in Sitka, Alaska, and of course I go up to visit her frequently. And one of the gentlemen, really lovely fellow that's a resident there, has a personal companion, as you have described. So he still, of course, gets all of the support of the nursing home, but then he has this gentleman that is right there living on the premises that takes care of a lot of his need to socialize a little more, or particular medical things that he requires. And it's the first time I saw it. This was about 3 years ago. It was the first time that I saw it. And I thought, just like what you are, that this really is a bit of the future, where you have the structure of the facility, but you also have this personal companion, right? This perfect companion that understands you and your needs and tends to them.
And that really is the big key with our company. The other thing that we do is we really try to, we're matching, right? In the facility or in maybe a regular home company, they may just be filling a body with a shift, and it may be a different person all the time, where we're really trying to put either a team together for that person, so that the family dynamics and the individual doesn't have to go through the same routine all the time. You just walk in seamlessly and do your job, and you create that relationship. And they because as time goes on, if they do have Alzheimer's or dementia, they start forgetting. And you want them to bond, but also you have this dialogue with the families. And that's really what we're known for, is communication. So we would, like for you and your mom, if you're not there, we're going to have a dialogue with you as well. And we want you to feel comfortable and trust that that person knows your mom so well that you can have those quirky conversations instead of having to tell the story all over again, right? Every time.
Yeah.
So,
which she would have those quirky conversations.
exactly.
If you knew my mother. Yes.
Most of them do.
Yes, indeed.
I'm interested to know how this pandemic has been affecting you all. I'm sure you've had to make a lot of accommodations for safety for your clients and for your caregivers. I have this friend whose mother fell and has had to have surgery, and she's got Alzheimer's, and she's unable to go to the hospital with her at all. She was finally able to go in and help transport her to an inpatient rehab facility. But they have told her she's going to have to go to the window, wave at her, they'll put her on the phone, you know, that kind of thing. So what kinds of accommodations have you made? Have you been able to continue care for all of your clients? Is a rehab a place where your caregivers would be allowed to go that maybe a family member wouldn't? Tell me how all of that would work for somebody like her.
That's a really great
Perfect
question. So here's what's really cool about our business is that we already have this model of one-on-one or team care. So we really had that in place already because that's part of our model. So as the clinical director, I have been working overtime, making sure everybody's healthy, everybody's safe, you know, who's traveling, who looks like they have a runny nose. I'm in every house, every caregiver, every client, making sure that everyone's healthy and safe and that everyone's following those guidelines. So we really were a step ahead because we already used some of those guidelines. The one cool thing also is that the communication that we already have, that we already do, is still engaged. And because we build these relationships with these families and also these independent living facilities, they trust us. They know us personally all the way up the corporate tree, and they trust only us to go in right now and will only refer to us because we already have those relationships and this model in place. So, you know, I pack up a bag, I've got a mask, I've got gloves, and I've got their name on it. It gives us an opportunity to just take one more step of personalization to our caregivers. And also the clients see that we're still, again, making that personal touch, not only to the client, but my goal is to make sure that the caregivers also feel that same concierge touch that we want to give to our clients. So we have had those challenges, and stepping up, I go in and have dinner with one of our clients' moms because he can't go in, right? I can bring her dinner. I can bring her prescriptions. I can bring her cookies, or, you know, we can do those special things for them that our families can't. Yes. Hamantash is what it is, really.
Yeah, it's like DoubleTree. We get cookies here. This is great.
Yes. So, you know, and I've been able to repurpose a caregiver who used to cut hair, and you know, they can't go out and get their hair or their nails done, and they're climbing the walls, they can't come out. So we've been able to repurpose a caregiver to come in and still do their hair right inside their home, and you know, send pictures back to the family and talk to them on the phone. So we, you know, it's one more extra layer of something we're already doing. So and they so appreciate even more the value because they don't get that hand, you know, that hand touch, the hug. They're not getting to see and hold their hand, and you know, they value that we're doing that for them. So, you know, almost to tears in some of the sons who are really, really close to their moms.
Yeah.
So Elizabeth, are we going to do a break pretty soon?
No, we are good on breaks for today.
Okay. Well, no, I was
a procedural guy.
I want to see what's behind you. Want to tell us what that is?
Yeah, this is the franchise woman. It's one of the logos that I use. Thought I'd finally put it up behind me instead of looking at my whiteboard with all my notes. I covered it up so it's not so messy looking. So we have our issue. Actually, May issue is coming out tomorrow.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you. Rebecca, do you want to take the down the rabbit hole question, or would you like me to do it?
You go ahead, girly, because you'll be better at picking it. I would really take them down a rabbit hole, so you do it.
Well, as tradition would have, Fred likes to ask questions about the zombie apocalypse. So with a pandemic, I think it's actually even more appropriate of a topic. What role do your caregivers play in holding off the zombie apocalypse, which we'll call the pandemic? This is a really easy one. I'm not as good as Fred.
Do you want to take the rabbit hole or me?
I think we can both take that one.
Either one of us. I'll let John go.
Let me just tell you that we've been out. We've been out almost every night till 9 or 10 o'clock at night, checking on our clients with our staff. We've been in these independent living facilities. We've had two clients who had suicidal ideation. They called me out. I had to do an evaluation on them both. I had called in the family, had to call the power of attorneys, had to call in. We had we've had the ability to be able to assist them in times when people are being locked down for 5 weeks. And you're talking about older people who can't go out and play their bridge or any card games or get out of their room sometimes. They're delivering the meals there. So, you could just imagine us being cooped in, but they are used to getting out of their apartments and being able to go down to the dining room, getting their hair done. They can't now. So we've been going in there. They allow us in there to be able to assist them in any needs that they have. I can tell you that we do that better than I think anybody in the Valley. We are so, from a communication standpoint, my staff is awesome. Everybody, Cassandra sets that tone. Of course, I set the tone, of course, as the owner of the business, but Cassandra sets that tone all the way down. So our administrative director, our clinical care, our coordinators, to our caregivers. And by the way, half of the companion caregivers working for the Perfect Companion have worked for us for longer than 5 years. So in this kind of an industry, the turnover for us is very small, and we pay our people on a weekly type of a basis. Right. We also pay them more than anybody in town too.
All right. Well, Ray, do you want to have the last question and wrap us up here?
Well, the last question is always simply, if someone wants to get a hold of you, if they're interested in what you're doing and talk to you about it, what is the best way of doing that?
I would say that they could reach the Perfect Companion calling myself or my cohort right here, and we can provide you with those phone numbers. They could call me at John Siegel at 602-300-5018. And I'll let Cassandra know.
I'm not giving out my telephone number.
I don't blame you one little bit.
We're going to text you.
Our website. AZPerfectCompanion.com.
Okay. I'm with you, Cassandra.
that number, the phone number and the website.
The website is awesome.
Yeah, and